Shall we begin the program? Is that what you're waiting for me to do? Oh, okay. I was just going to sit here. Um, Thank you all for coming tonight, and please bear with me because I don't want to forget anything, so I'm going to read somewhat. First of all, we would like very much to thank the Deanna and Sidney Wolk Center for Memory Health at Hebrew Senior Life for presenting all three programs, including tonight's program, and to Emily Siegel, who has been our point person in putting together these programs. Tonight's program, we will learn more about senior living, healthcare, and community resources to help you or your loved ones maximize physical wellness, social stimulation, and personal fulfillment at any age. As we said in April, we will continue this series of looking at dementia with our Care and Connections program. David Rader will be our speaker tonight. David is a new resident advisor at Newbridge, providing support and guidance to seniors contemplating a move to a new life plan community like Newbridge. Prior to his role, David oversaw the Community Life Department, which is responsible for building community in the areas of programming, fitness, member services, and spiritual life. Having come to Newbridge on the Charles in 2009, David has more than 20 years of experience in the senior living industry, both in sales and marketing positions, and as regional director of the activity programs at over 40 assisted living communities in the Northeast. Prior to that, he worked in corporate team development for a company that specializes in experiential learning. So we will introduce and welcome David in one moment. I just wanted to also remember that the first two programs have been recorded and they are available on the website, at TBE's website, as will this program. So please welcome David Rader, our speaker tonight.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you tonight, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Carolyn. I'll be honest, this is not something I do every day as a special guest lecturer on Zoom. Zoom is has been part of our lives for the last few years, and it's a way for us to connect. It's not ideal, but we're going to do the best we can today. So just to build on what Carolyn mentioned, I just wanted to share with you how I got into this industry in the first place, which was over 20 years ago when my grandmother, who has since passed away, she was one of the first residents of LaSalle Village as part of LaSalle College. And at the time, I thought it was very, very interesting. And my first role in the senior living industry was doing sales for a community called New Pond Village, which is in Walpole. At the time, I had done a couple of different things, and it didn't take long for me to determine that this is the career for me. This is the right fit for me. So I've spent the last 20 years helping seniors make this difficult decision. I've also spent many years in operations on the ground, working one-on-one, helping residents achieve their goals. I also want to briefly pay tribute to somebody that many of you probably know, and his name was Marty Kress. Does that name ring a bell? So when I first started at Newbridge, I was the program manager, and I started working with Marty pretty early on, starting in 2011, I think through 2014. And he would come to Newbridge periodically, usually once a month, and he would do movie discussion groups where we'd play the Israeli film, and then Marty would take over. I remember vividly him bringing the series Srugim to us, where we would watch it back when we had DVDs. And then Marty was just a great guy. So, and we have many residents who are still very active with your congregation. And it's been a pleasure meeting them. And I remember my relationship with Marty very fondly. So I do have a slide presentation tonight. However, I really want this to be as interactive as as it can be. Um, I could share my screen and go through the slides and do sort of a traditional presentation, but I really want to make sure that you walk away with information that is going to be useful to you. So I'd love to just open it up to anyone that wants to share what would you like to walk away with tonight? What would be successful for you in investing this time tonight? Because I want to make sure I cover the things that are important to you. So you can just unmute if you feel comfortable and share what you're hoping to walk away with tonight. Crickets. Okay. Well, you're all here for a reason. And I assume that's because you are thirsty for knowledge when it comes to senior living. So I hope tonight I'll be able to share some. Yep, please, Helene.
It took me a minute to sort of formulate my thoughts, but
Okay, good.
what's of interest to me, because there is this rich array of resources out there.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you know which one, where on the continuum you're fitting, or what you should be thinking about to decide that?
You mean where are you in terms of the point in your life that you should be looking at?
And where and how do you decide what's your entry point?
Got it. We'll definitely cover that. That's a great point. Yep, Margie.
I, I've been to Newbridge many times and it's beautiful. I've been to some of the others and they're beautiful. But as beautiful as they are and as fully encompassing they are, there's for some of us, they're out of reach financially.
Yep.
So, I would love to find someplace when I do decide that, to no longer live in an independent apartment, someplace that's really moderately priced, but has opportunities to learn and to stay vital and to stay involved.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Louise.
So I'll answer Margie's question. You may already know about this. So we are moving to Opus in a year and a half. And that is specifically designed for people in the middle because there was a huge need. So you have a Newbridge and a LaSalle that's, really towards the top, and other places that are a lower level. So
yeah,
this is the only one in the country so far that will be targeted for people in the middle. And I have to say, it's been a phenomenal experience. My husband, Charlie, is here, but he's, we are waiting now. Our apartment will be ready in a year and a half. They are still taking new applications and the people have been fantastic. And I can only say, very positive things. And it's very centrally located. It's on the campus of the JCC in Newton. And you'll be able to use the facilities at the JCC, but there'll be lots of things, obviously going on there. It's not the same as Newbridge, it's much smaller. There's probably 150 to 175 apartments. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm very aware of Opus, and I'm very curious to see how they're able to provide the services. I think the senior living industry, there are a lot of choices for people that are at a certain income level. And there are also several options for seniors who have very, very little to no resources. But that middle has been ignored. So I'm very curious to see how Opus does. And just to share a quick personal thing with you guys, experiencing this right now, going through this process with my own family member. And this family member I have, when Opus came out and announced themselves to the world, they had I think it was a $500 refundable deposit just to sort of get your name in the queue. And this family member that I'm so close, I can just tell you, she's my mom. She's turning 80 next year. She didn't want to do it. She declined. So there are some people, I think, in your shoes that are waiting to move to a retirement community. There might be others that might have parents or family members that they're concerned about, or can get themselves some more information to start that conversation. So even though I work in the industry, I was not able to convince my mom. And one of the things that if you take nothing else away from tonight, and we say this at Newbridge where I work, is at the end of the day, people have the right to make bad decisions. So what I mean by that is, we see very clearly there are some people that we know will thrive in a different environment. And we're convinced of that, but if they're not convinced of that, it's not going to make a difference. So at the end of the day, it's really each person has that right to decide what's best for them, what's most consistent with their core values, what's consistent with what matters most to them. So I can tell you from my mom, at some point, we're going to have to develop a plan. Because when you don't have a plan, when a crisis hits, God forbid, when something happens and you haven't had that conversation in advance to say, okay, if and when this happens, here's our plan. And the plan doesn't have to be set in stone. The plan can evolve as years go on, but we'll get into that. But I'm very happy for you, Louise. Susan, go ahead.
I guess my question is, when do you start making the plan? At what age? And
yeah, I think it really depends on how you make decisions. There are some people I meet that come to Newbridge and they say, you know what, we're not ready to even think about moving in for 10 years. They're really thinking ahead and being very methodical. Maybe they had, I'm starting to get a lot of people who have gone through this experience with their own parents, and now they find themselves in their 70s or early 80s, and now it's their turn to start thinking about it. So other people, it's more need driven. Let's face it, mortality is a subject that it's very natural to not want to think about your own mortality, or not to want to talk about your own mortality. Most people, I can't remember the statistics I found, but a lot of it's more common for people to have planned ahead and made decisions and gotten their affairs in order. Those folks are in the minority. Most people live day to day, week to week, month to month, and year to year. And I'm not going to worry about that right now, because it'll all work out for me. So a lot of people do have that mentality. So what I would say I can't see the person who just asked that question. What I would say is start. Yeah, Susan. So start before you have to. That would be my advice. Lisa, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, hi, thank you. So similar to your situation, David, I have parents who are in their 80s. My father has Alzheimer's, and my mother definitely has some cognitive decline, and we've been having conversations for years now about maybe we should start planning ahead. Maybe we should start putting some deposits down. And well, I get the impression that my mother might be interested. That, you know, they've been married 60 years, and
Yeah.
there's a dynamic between them, and the dynamic is such that my mother just defers to my dad. My dad's like, I'm not leaving this house ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's getting to be a real challenge for them. As it is, I'm managing their finances, I'm doling out their pills on a
Mhm.
weekly basis. And I just look, like you said, other people from the outside can sort of really see the clear picture, but
Right.
they are not ready. And so I'm just curious in terms of what to get out of tonight is, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yep.
maybe some strategies and resources that might help put my parents in a better direction. And in addition to that, they have nothing to do with their time. Like, they're both, well, my mom never worked, but my dad has worked his whole life and literally has only been retired within the last year.
Wow.
Because there was a family business that he would go to. I mean, when he was,
Yep.
you know, he wouldn't necessarily do a whole lot, but he would go every day.
Yep.
Gave him something to do.
Yep.
And now that's gone. And I keep trying. I showed them the Arlington Adult Day program. I connected them to the senior center in their town. And my dad was like, no, that's for old people. He's 84. He's gonna be 85 next
Yeah.
month.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, did you see the people in there? No.
Yeah.
So that's my struggle is I just see them and they're not in very safe, not a safe environment, and they don't
Yeah.
have much in their lives. Their lives have shrunk, you know, their
Yeah.
social connections have shrunk, people dying, and they also recognize not what they once were, and they're kind of keeping to themselves, and they have nothing to do. And I'm like, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where that's why I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and I'll definitely give you some strategies.
Thank
And just to know, like Lisa, that it's a tough situation when you're facing sort of role reversal. And you know, you bring your entire relationship with your parents, you bring that to this situation. So yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to give you some steps.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other people that want to make sure they have something that they'd like to have covered tonight? Okay, so the title for tonight's talk. Oh, go ahead, Cynthia. Sorry, I didn't see you. You have to unmute. There you
I
go.
was trying to figure out how to do that cute hand icon that Lisa used. My granddaughter's sitting next to me and I whispered, how do you raise your hand? I think one of the issues, just to add to your agenda, is that I have a lot of familiarity with independent living places, and also a number of friends who have begun to look and have put down deposits and so on.
Yeah.
There's waiting lists every place, or most places. There's a waiting list. You can't just get into a place. So you really have to start looking well ahead of time. And the variety, the kinds of places, the expenses, it's a lot to take in.
That's right.
And I think that being in the situation where you have to make a snap decision because there's been an emergency is a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's you know, you don't have to get a PhD in it, but there's a lot to learn about it all. As
Absolutely.
Louise is nodding, and I know, having made their decision, that they must have gone through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different kinds of communities in terms of rentals versus entrance fees, continual care communities versus standalone communities, profit versus nonprofit. So there's a lot of information to have to sift through, not to mention the fact that really what it comes down to is when you visit a place, can you see yourself living there? And that can take several visits for you to feel comfortable just choosing a place. Never mind, can you afford it? And is, you know, all of these factors, which are very important, but can I see myself there? You know, and that can take some time. Yep, Carolyn.
And one more thing, I don't know if this is within the scope of what you had planned to discuss tonight, but if it is, if you could discuss some community resources before you make the big decision, because I think people need sometimes to ease into a change, or who may decide they want to stay at home, and what community resources are available.
Yep, we'll get into that. Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's get started. So well, we've gotten started, but let's really get into the meat of the presentation tonight. So the title of our topic tonight is Resources for Aging Well. I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you define aging well?
I would say something along the lines of safely, like being in a safe environment.
Okay,
So that you're not at risk of injury and you're well taken care of, your needs are met, those kinds of things.
Absolutely, thank you. Yep,
I also a feeling of connection. Okay, not to be isolated, and you know, there's a couple of levels when you have a partner, and then when you don't have a partner, whether the partner is deceased or has to be in a different environment. So I will say that being part of the TBE community has really been a savior for me in terms of feeling connected and cared about. You know, and that's separate from living expenses, but it really does enhance my life, and I'm sure many other people's.
It's a good point. Based on what you just said, Margie, I'm just going to share my screen with you and pull up one of my slides here. So this is from the CDC. So they talk about we talk about loneliness versus social isolation. And the statistic that I found very impactful is the mortality impact of loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it's important that we make a distinction between loneliness and social isolation. And as the slide says here, loneliness is the feeling of being alone, regardless of the amount of social contact. Social isolation is a lack of social connection. So just because somebody is around people doesn't mean that they're not lonely. So I'm going to stop my share for a sec. So just think about that for a minute. 15 cigarettes a day is the impact of loneliness. That's incredible. How else do you define aging well? What else comes to mind?
Well, to dovetail on what Margie said, it's very it depends what circumstances you're in, and it changes. In my present circumstance, my wish is to remain who I am for as long as I can be me. And I'm not sure how to define that exactly, but I want to continue living a life that I have defined myself in.
Okay. You know, one of the questions that we ask at at all of the Heber Senior Life properties is this question of what matters most. And I know that that's not a unique question, but I ask that question when I meet people they're coming to Newbridge for the first time. And I ask that question, and for many people, it catches them off guard because it's not something that they have, many people, it's not something that they've really given a lot of thought to. So as you're supporting parents or family members, as you're thinking about this for yourselves, you know, that's one question that you should really think about, which is what matters most. Some people answer that question saying, having a large apartment and space matters most to me. Being on the first floor matters to me. Being on the top floor matters to me. Making sure that the place I go to has an art studio matters most to me. Finding a community that has people that I have can find commonalities with, and in a place that I already know people. That's what matters most to me. Being active is what matters most to me. I get all these answers, so I would encourage all of you to really think about think about that question. And it's a question we ask not just the first time someone visits, but it's a question we ask throughout the time that our residents are with us, because what matters most to you today might not be the same thing that matters most to you a year from now or 5 years from now. Other thoughts on how would you define aging well? We have safety, we have connection, we have self-identity. What else would you say?
Activities, events.
Activities? Say more about that. What do you mean by activities?
Oh, I was thinking along the lines of being in a place that has things that you're interested in doing.
Yeah.
It provides opportunities to connect with others so you aren't isolated. It gives you options of things to explore and learn and grow.
That's right. I mean, we are hardwired as humans to be with other people. It's just part of who we are. And when you take that away, it can have severely negative health impacts for people. Helene.
I'm just thinking about actually the answers to both of your questions. I think what matters most changes as your situation changes. And so that leads me to my definition of aging well, which is to somehow be able to adjust to whatever your situation is as it changes, which it will, and making the most of where you are, because that's going to change too.
Yeah.
It's light.
Yep. We certainly lived that experience through the pandemic. I don't ever want to have to go through something like that again. But different people
it's okay.
handle that differently. And I think a lot of it had to do with the type of person you are going into something like that. And some people did better than others, as I'm sure you're aware. And the ones that did the best are the ones that even though they were physically isolated from others, they still felt connected to community. Those are the folks that did the best. So I really feel for people that were alone in their homes, lonely and isolated, and that became kind of their new normal. So I think we're just now getting to the point where people feel like getting outside your comfort zone and joining something like this, or going to a class, or going to a temple event. People needed a little bit of time for that to become their new normal again.
The young lady that just spoke about her parents, first she described her parents, and then she described what she hoped was a good situation with all these activities, but it doesn't sound, I don't know her, and I'm not judging that that's her parents' agenda. That's what she would like for her parents. So that's really hard when you have an adult child that sees a need, but you don't, that's not who you are. If you really want to stay independent and, don't feel you never did art before, you never did never played cards before. I'm not talking about myself, but it's hard when those things are available if that doesn't interest them. It sounded like, her folks were happy where they were, even though it doesn't sound like a great setup. For me, I talked about connection and also independence. The thought of being dependent on someone, having been the primary caregiver for my mom, I have one surviving daughter. I do not want to be dependent on her. So I have to plan so that I have a good plan,
Yeah.
so she never feels burdened. Responsible, loyal, everything she's fine with. She's fine. She doesn't call it a burden anyway, but for me, it's burden.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I need to plan. So, and that's part of my consciousness that I don't want to be a burden.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Margie. Susan, go ahead.
Most people know this about me. My parents lived with us. My mother's been gone for 18 years. My father became sick the first week of the pandemic, right after we all moved. By the grace of God and my Jewish connections, I got him into Newbridge on the second floor in long-term care.
Mm-hmm.
And what his internist and what I always wanted for him, because my mother was the real social butterfly, was to get out and do things and not be stuck in the house. And he didn't want to. And then he gets to Newbridge and it's in the middle of the pandemic. So he's in a single room. And what kept him happy was doing crossword puzzles and watching his Red Sox and all of those things that would make me absolutely mashuggy sitting around and doing nothing. It made him happy. And so for the last 2.5 years of his life, he was incredibly well taken care of, and he was doing what he wanted to do. We couldn't even get him out of his room half the time. But that's what made him happy. And so I wasn't going to fight with it. I offered to sneak him out to take him for a ride, and he wanted none of it, and I wouldn't push it.
Yeah.
And that's how he lived the end of his life. And you know what? He was perfect. And at 93 years old, his head was together to the end. So I firmly believe it was the crossword puzzles, and it was watching the news and doing those things to keep your mind mentally fit. When you're in the position where that doesn't happen because there's cognitive decline, I get that. But I was very lucky with him that there wasn't. So you sort of have to let them figure it out as much as you want to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing. And you're right that people who wake up every day with something to look forward to tend to live longer. People that take courses and read, move their bodies, these are all things that we're hardwired to do for thousands of years. So when that stops, you're not going to have the same kind of quality of life. And you can continue to learn new things at any age. The brain is you can create new neural networks in your brain. I'm not an expert in this, but what I know about it is just anecdotally, the people that come to the weekly crossword puzzle or come to the current events discussion that I do every week, they have a purpose every day. The people that get involved in community, and they can see that they're actually making a difference. Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
But what I think this conversation highlights, and it's complicated, is that people have very different needs. And one size doesn't fit all. I have a friend who would be very happy if she could be by herself and nobody would bother her. She's not depressed. That's who she is. She likes the solitude. She has plenty of things to do. But I think it's important to remember that we're all very different and we approach every stage of our life differently. And it's hard because one size doesn't fit all.
That's right. That's right. And what matters most is going to be different from yours. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again and share this slide with you because I think this is relevant certainly to Lisa. So the title here is Having the Conversation. So Lisa, the first thing I would say to you is, or anybody who is thinking about having this conversation with a family member or friend, is sometimes you might be a little bit too close to really have an impactful conversation with them. So there might be a different family member, a family friend, even their primary care doctor could approach their current situation in a way that feels different to them from you bringing it up. And one thing I just want to share with you all, some of you might know this, but you're, as a caring family member, you are able to communicate with your parents' primary care physician, not in a two-way communication, but you can actually send a letter, you can send an email that describes what you might be worried about when it comes to your parents. You're not going to get a response from them necessarily, but it might spur the primary care doctor to make a note of that, and on their next visit, have that in their file, so to speak. So you are able to do that.
David,
so when it comes to this slide, the thing that's in bold here, not in bold, but in all capital letters, is listen. Listening is a skill, and it's not easy sometimes. So the way I would recommend approaching it is one way to think about it is to frame the conversation in the spirit of that, Lisa, you would actually take the initiative to do some of this planning and preparing for yourself, because you're never too young to start having conversations with family members, to start thinking about powers of attorney and healthcare proxy, because life is very fragile. So if you actually take the initiative and share that with them, perhaps that might make them more likely to have that conversation. And you have to know that this is not going to be a one-time thing. Another way to approach it, rather than asking them, trying to have this conversation with them, but trying to appeal to the fact that this would be like a gift that they could give to you. And I'll stop my share for a second here. This could be like a gift that they give to you. In other words, you don't want to have a situation where you're not aware of what their wishes are. And it's a gift for you to not have to think about what would mom or dad, what would they, what would their preferences be. You shouldn't have to guess that. And the more knowledge you have up front, I think timing has a lot to do with this. I would not recommend doing this in like a family social gathering or some kind of festive celebration. And it might take a couple of times. There's something called the Conversation Project, and that'll be in the notes, which is basically a guide to having these meaningful conversations with family members. So this was a couple of years ago where I talked to my mom. I said, what, we really should have the conversation. She said, yeah, you're right. And I shared the questions with her to consider in advance. We went out to lunch, and then I started asking the questions, and I was ready with my pencil to start taking down the information. And for every question that I asked, the answer was, I don't know. And it was she wasn't ready to have the conversation, even though she kind of knew that, this is something we should do. So it's really hard. Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
I work very closely with our members on everything.
Yeah.
And something that I have found since the pandemic, really, are people calling when there's no illness involved, nothing, to talk about setting up funeral plans for them or purchasing. I have somebody, a temple member, younger than me in their 50s, bought cemetery plots for the family. So it's one less thing to worry about. And for people that I had to pre-plan my father's funeral because I had to get rid of his whatever little money he had. And that was the perfect way to do it. So that when he died, I had nothing to do but call them and say whatever. And it was all taken care of.
Yeah.
And it lets your children, in Lisa's case, her, I'm sorry, I hope you don't feel like we're picking on you, Lisa, at all. I'm happy you're here. It's something that you don't have to think about. All the way down to, are we going to bury him in a suit or in a shroud? What would you like? And it takes the guesswork out. When my mother was sick and dying, and I made the decision to turn off the machine, and the rabbi said to me, I bet that was the hardest decision you've ever made. And I said, it was the easiest decision I ever made because she wouldn't have been happy that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she put me in charge. It's a horrible conversation. Nobody wants to have it because nobody wants to think about it. But it's so important for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And, there's a lot of talk in the media about, looking at our own president who is 80 years old. Ageism is sort of one of the last sort of culturally acceptable forms of discrimination. Think about and I don't mean to be political, but think about how people think about our own president compared to someone like the Dalai Lama, who is in his late 80s. The age and wisdom is not thought about in the same way across the world. And we live in a time now where there's so much out there on anti-aging, how to stop the aging process, like it's some kind of disease. People thinking about cryogenics. People live in a world of abundance and don't really want to consider their own mortality, that they're somehow expecting, I'm going to take some kind, they'll come up with something, some kind of pill or some kind of exercise regimen that will help me stay alive for decades longer than I should. So we live in this society where it's no wonder why people wouldn't want to have this kind of conversation, because it's not pleasant. Yeah, Cynthia.
Susan, my parents did that for my sisters and me. They prearranged everything down to paying for the Globe obituary. Prices had gone up, so we had to pay a little bit for that, but I'll be coming to see you because I'm doing the same thing for my kids. I think it was the greatest gift that they could ever have given us. When you're in mourning, the last thing you need to do is start listening to somebody trying to upsell you on a casket and all that stuff.
Right. And, your family members, your parents better than anybody. So if an approach that you're taking isn't working, you got to think creatively and try something else. So for example, if a person loves a deal and a bargain, if you pay for your funeral in advance, it actually costs a lot less than having to do it when it happens. So appealing to people's what might resonate with somebody. Let me share my screen again. And I'm going to take you to this slide because I want to make sure we cover resources that are available to you. Let's see. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of planning ahead. Now let's talk about when to take action. And when it comes to making a change, you do have choices to make. And there are resources available for both staying in your own home or moving to some kind of a retirement community. So first, let's talk about the overall services that are available. So these are what we're calling non-medical community resources. So just for fun, I went on the Wellesley Council on Aging website earlier today, as well as you'll see their logo called Springwell. And Springwell is an example of an aging service access point, or better known as ASAPs. So these, there are 26, I think, ASAPs across Massachusetts. The ASAP that supports Wellesley, Newton, Needham is an organization called Springwell. So these are available to anybody. The services that they provide are available to any seniors or family members in that area. They're not all created equal. The Springwell services that they provide are quite comprehensive, whereas if you get out to some of the more rural parts of the state, their ASAPs do not provide the same amount of services. So if you're starting this journey, your local Council on Aging or your local ASAP will be a good place to start. So again, what matters most to some people might be, I want to stay in my home for as long as I possibly can. So there are, there are many things that are actually covered by insurance. One thing that really stands out to me is this first bullet, which is home safety evaluation. So if you're in a caregiving role and you're seeing that your parents or loved one or friend is suffering, has experienced some falls, you know, we all know that a fall can lead to other poor outcomes. There are services out there, and it could be paid for by insurance, like an occupational therapist who could actually come to someone's home and evaluate how safe it is. So, and then make recommendations of how to reduce the likelihood of further falls. So these are some of the things that are available to everybody, regardless of income. So if you're a person that wants to stay in your home, there are also non-medical services that you pay for out of pocket. So this would be known as what we call private care. So these are people that you hire to come to your home to help you with what we call activities of daily living, which could be anything from reminders about medication to companionship, meal preparation, transportation, and your local Council on Aging or ASAP will have these resources available to you. For people with more resources, there are also a whole segment of professionals that are known as geriatric care managers. So these are folks that typically have a social work or nursing background. So they can actually provide an incredible amount of support for if you're in a situation where taking care of, you know, if you're in a caregiver role and it's just too much for you to be able to manage, a geriatric care manager can be a person who doesn't have, they're professional and knowledgeable, and they don't have the prior relationship with your family member that you do. So it could be that a geriatric care manager can be more effective because their professional opinion might go further than a conversation between family members. That's just that's what we've experienced. So if you feel that community is most important to you, and you want to have, and not that you can't get community living at home, because there are some people who are able to get to their local senior centers. There are lots of organizations that provide transportation to people who can't drive anymore. There are organizations that deliver meals to people. So just because you live alone, or if you live as part of a couple, that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that you need to be socially isolated. It does make it a little bit more difficult because you have to be more intentional and have more of a plan for how you're going to bring community and connection to your life than living in a senior living community. So this is the next sort of option for seniors. So as we discussed before, the senior housing, senior living world almost has its own language that you get pretty well versed in as you go down this rabbit hole. So there are several options when it comes to senior living, starting with independent living, which does not include any care. This is for people who are making a proactive life choice decision that they are not living their best life for whatever reason in their home, and moving to a senior living, independent living community will help them live a better life. Then there's supportive senior housing. So again, we talk about there are options for people who have resources, and then there are also options that qualify financially. These are independent living apartments for low-income seniors that has some programming, dining, supportive services, and social work. Hebrew Senior Life manages several of these kinds of housing communities. One I think of, which is on Revere Beach, called the Jack Satter House, where these are very low income seniors, and they all have a view of the ocean. So they're quite fortunate. Then you also have what's called assisted living, or otherwise known as enhanced living. So this is a social model in that it's really for people who are otherwise independent, but might need a little bit of help with some of these activities of daily living. Like they might need help with a shower, or they might need medication reminders. It's really a way for people to remain independent, which is kind of counterintuitive when you hear the word assisted living. But we've actually seen people move from independent living to assisted living and actually gain independence by moving to assisted living, because more things are taken care of in assisted living. Like, for example, most assisted living communities have a very rich calendar of programming choices. They typically will include 3 meals a day. They're generally smaller than a more sprawling retirement community, so it makes it very easy to navigate the support. And then there's nursing care. So on the right side of the slide here, so we have long-term care, which is otherwise known as skilled nursing or chronic care. So this is really for people, this is more of a medical model. This is for people who really need more support than what assisted living can provide. Typically, assisted living provides like an hour or two per day of specific care that they need. Skilled nursing has doctors and nurses on staff. So for people that are in a wheelchair or bedridden or can't feed themselves, long-term care would be a fit for them. And then there's also memory care. So this is for people who have dementia, and there are many, many forms of dementia, Alzheimer's disease being one of them. So many assisted living communities have what's called a memory support program. So at Newbridge, we have in our assisted living, about half of the apartments are dedicated to our memory care program. So this is a connected building to the other assisted living building, but it's really for people who who would be unsafe if they had the ability to come and go as they please. So it's really a kind of like a locked unit where they get more supervision. There's a lot of, again, the programming is really enhanced, focusing on therapies, music therapies, art therapy, things like that. And then finally, there are what we call continuing care retirement communities. These are also called life plan communities. That's kind of the one of the newer ways that some of these retirement communities are marketing themselves. So this is where you have everything on one campus. So that means that you wouldn't, as your needs change, that means you wouldn't have to necessarily move to another community or facility. They have everything all under one roof. And here are some of the characteristics of the different areas. So independent living, assisted living, and then nursing care. So 24-hour skilled nursing care, medical direction, memory care, which we just talked about. So this is a slide giving you a sense of what a continuing care retirement community might look like. So so they might have, and not everyone is exactly the same, both in services and in size, but generally they'll have independent living, assisted living. They might have what's called respite assisted living. So this is really for people that can go to assisted living for a short time and then go back to their independent living apartment. Also the skilled nursing, which in many cases also includes a short-term rehab component. And then some retirement communities also offer supportive services like of a social worker. They quite likely have partnerships with local hospice companies. Hebrew Senior Life, we have our own hospice. So there's a a really seamless transition in terms of services. And then home health. So when people come to a continual care retirement community, they're assured that no matter what their future holds, that one community can take care of their needs. So that's a something that a lot of residents and families find comfort in. This is actually taken from a source called Genworth. So this is the approximate costs of care in the Boston area for assisted living. It's not inexpensive. And this number of the 81,825, when I looked at this, I thought, you know, that can be kind of a low number. There are a lot of places that have much higher monthly fees. Skilled nursing can be even higher. And then in-home care. So this is you bringing in your own private help Let me just stop to see if there's questions. Okay, questions so far. Louise, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, this is for a friend. It's not for me.
Yeah.
A geriatric case manager, whatever.
Yeah.
How would you go about finding that person? Where
I would contact the ASAP of where that person lives, because they probably have a list of people that they would recommend.
what is ASAP?
So if you do a Google search, Massachusetts ASAP, you'll come to a website that's run by the state. It's a state website, and it'll show the different agencies and what towns that they support. So like I said, there's about 26 of them across the state. Where does your friend, what area?
They live around here.
Yeah, so it's probably Springwell is probably
Okay.
the ASAP that's for them.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. And again, geriatric care managers are not necessarily an affordable option for everybody. And they can provide services that can be very extensive to just get you started. But again, that's their job, is to help you navigate this very complex world. And every situation is different.
So would you recommend a
Yeah.
place like Jewish Family Services? Because I think it's more affordable when you go through them and they can sort of recommend different options.
Yeah, that would be a good resource, or the senior center of whatever town. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I would say talk to more than one. Another thing that's not in my slide presentation is the benefit of working. If you are deciding to move to a senior living community, the benefit of working with a move manager. Most of the people that move to continual care retirement communities don't do it all themselves. And move managers, just from my 14 years at Newbridge, I know that they the value that they provide, it sort of goes beyond what you can put a dollar amount on, because let's face it, moving at any age is not easy. When you're moving after living in a house maybe for 50 years and you have arthritis and your back aches, you're not in any position you shouldn't have to be moving boxes around. So I can't emphasize enough the value that these move managers bring. And again, the scope of their services can be everything from helping you clean out your house to helping pack you up, helping you unpack, everything in between. So I've seen them save a lot of adult children parent relationships. Helene, you had a question.
I was just going to suggest that JFNCS has an outstanding geriatric care management program.
Yeah.
But it's not cheap.
That's right. Lisa, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the move managers, you're saying the best place to locate move managers would be through senior centers, various communities, senior centers?
Yeah, they might have those resources. So you hold on. And certainly I'm happy to share I'll put my email address in the chat, because I can also
Thank you.
Share. We have a list of people that we know and trust. I'm just going to put my email in.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? I want to make sure I covered everything on my slide here. My slides. Let me share my screen again. Hold on. Navigate. Yeah, Margie.
I just think you should make it clear that a move manager, you already know where you're going.
True.
They don't help you decide. The geriatric care managers at JF and CS will help you see the whole picture. They are superb. And even if they're the first ones to mention you need to go to an elder care lawyer, which they said to me. But a move manager is once you've chosen the place to move you from where you are to where you're going.
Yeah, and I don't think you need necessarily to be moving to benefit from the services that they provide too. But it's a good point. And geriatric care managers can also be sort of a hub to bring in other specialists depending on what your needs are, whether it's elder law attorneys, move managers, realtors. They have a network of people that they know and trust. Because how many of you actually live in a home that you've been living in for a long time? So quite a few, yeah. Some people have already downsized to some kind of like condo living, but I meet a lot of people who have lived in the same home for over 50 years. So it's never too early to start the process. Even if you end up staying where you are, just the process of tidying up can really sort of lift a person's mood and spirit. All you need to do is sort of start. You need to get started. Once you get started, it's kind of like a snowball that has momentum. The hardest thing to do is just to start with one box or one area of your basement or your bedroom closet or something like that. But once you start, then you can gain momentum and have some small successes. Okay, let me go back to my slide for a minute, my slides, just to make sure I shared everything that I wanted to share with you all today. Let's see. Yeah, okay. And you can send me an email and I can send you this this slide deck as well.
And I'll forward the slide deck to Susan.
Oh, okay.
So I think she'll probably distribute it too.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to go to the
Here's just a little bit of,
I was just going to say the last slides that show the resources if people want to jot them down, although people will get a copy of it as well.
Yeah, so there are resources that are out there for you. It's just a matter of honing in on the specific things that you really need. The state of Massachusetts, the Mass Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and the Conversation Project are also, Lisa, I would say the Conversation Project would be something that you'd want to consider. Okay. And finally, I think in order to be able to navigate this, you need to have a sense of humor, which is certainly a big part of the Jewish culture. At Newbridge, we kind of joke that you need to have a sense of humor in order to work at Newbridge or live at Newbridge. And in that spirit, I hope I can share my screen and end with something funny. One of the things I've been doing at Newbridge for 13 years is every week I lead a current events discussion group, which is about 10 or 15 residents, and we talk about some really hard things, like what's going on in the Middle East, climate change, immigration. So very early on, I thought to myself, boy, I don't want people leaving here really sad and down and depressed. So we have this tradition where we always end with something either positive or funny. So in that spirit, I'm going to share my screen with you and share something that I hope you find funny. Let me just pull it up here. Share my sound. Let's see. This is about, oh, hold on. Hold on, I pulled up the wrong thing. Let me try that again. Share my screen. So I hope you didn't find that offensive, but sometimes we have to laugh. Does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up? Well,
Hear me?
oh, was that Ruth who wanted to chime in?
Yeah. I took a class today on decluttering. The instructor had us, he timed us for 10 minutes and had us find some area in our homes. It was on Zoom. We had to find an area in our homes to spend 10 minutes decluttering. And it was interesting because it was not overwhelming. A 10-minute time period is manageable. And everyone in the class was able to get rid of some unneeded items in 10 minutes.
Okay, I couldn't really hear you, but did everybody else hear what Ruth was saying? I couldn't really get that.
It was an exercise on decluttering and what the
yeah.
experience was like, but I couldn't hear it as clearly either.
Yeah.
Think about giving 10 minutes, and if you spend 10 minutes, everybody spent 10 minutes and they were able to get rid of some unneeded items.
Yeah.
And then it's not overwhelming because it's just 10 minutes.
That's right. That's right. And it can go in 3 buckets. It's, if you're moving, it's like, I'm going to take this with me. I'm going to donate it, or I'm going to throw it away. It's not rocket science. And inevitably, people that are downsizing and don't use a move manager, they always bring way too much stuff. They bring more stuff that can actually fit in the apartment. Other thoughts or questions?
This is sort of,
yeah.
I just had one other question. It's sort of a tangent, but I know a lot of the resources you have are in Massachusetts for local resources. We're also helping an older woman who lost her husband, who's 81, up in Maine. And I'm also in need of resources for up in Maine. So I don't know if you have any of those.
I could find out. I mean, sometimes just a simple Google search.
Okay.
I would go right to the town that they live in, because most towns do have like a senior center or some kind of council on aging. That would be a really good place to start.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I hope this was beneficial for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed spending time with you all. Susan or Carolyn, is there anything we need to do to wrap up?
I just wanted to thank you very much. You've met my criteria for a good program in that you connected with us in a very personal way, which I think is important. You gave us information that was helpful. And from my point of view, is you entertained us to a certain degree. And I think that's, so I thank you very much again for coming and talking with us. Just another resource, if you or any of you are readers of The New Yorker and like Roz Chaz, she wrote a book called Can We Talk About Something More Pleasant? And that was dealing with her parents and in old age. And it's quite funny, and you can get it from the library. And I think it's a very nice way to sort of begin the conversation with yourself that you can then begin with your family member. So I'm so happy that you all attended. Again, this program was recorded. Thank you, Susan, and will be up on the website, and Susan will tell you how to get to it, because I get lost on our website, to be quite honest with you. I hope you will attend our program in April, and we also will be having something else throughout the year, because this aging and is just an important topic. that we haven't talked enough about at TBE, and we need to talk about more. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very
Thank
much.
you for
Everybody.
your participation. I
Good
appreciate it.
night.
Thank you.
Night. Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you, Carol.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks, everyone.